Hello, everyone. First, I would like to express my sincere apologies for greeting you in such an unfamiliar and unsettling place as a prison. However, I must say this one thing, and I would appreciate it if you would understand that I am telling you my story in this way, even though I know it may be somewhat impolite. And by the way, I'd like to thank the creator for giving me the opportunity to appear in this video. Please subscribe, like, and leave plenty of comments, as this will encourage the creator to create even better videos. I have no doubt that your loving interest and consideration will be the driving force behind the creation of valuable and quality videos. Then I will continue telling my story. Today, I want to share with you a story that has been hidden deep in the shadows of my life, and that I've only just found the courage to reveal to the world. This story is about my roots, my lineage, and the strange legacy that ties it to. This may sound like a dramatic story to you, hard to believe, but this is a very vivid and painful truth that has permeated my entire life. The reason I stand here and bring up a story I've kept hidden for so long is not simply a personal confession, but rather a profound desire to reflect together on the materialism that permeates our society and the harm it causes. If my regrets and reflections can serve as a small light in your lives, I would be honored beyond measure. My name is Kim Young-soo. It's only now, as I approach 80, that I can finally confess the biggest secret of my life. I have lived my whole life in wealth and without envy. He grew up without any lack from a young age and achieved great success in business, earning the envy of many. On the outside, I seemed to have everything, but deep inside, there was always an inexplicable anxiety and emptiness. It was as if I was building a sandcastle. No matter how solidly I built it, it was so precarious that it seemed like it would collapse. Looking back, that anxiety was like a poisonous mushroom that continued to eat away at me. From deep within my subconscious, no matter how many designer clothes I wore, how many top-notch foods I ate, and how many expensive cars I drove, the emptiness didn't seem to fill and instead seemed to deepen. There were many times when I couldn't sleep at night. I would wake up at dawn and toss and turn in bed, overcome by an inexplicable sense of anxiety, a vague fear that the tower of success I had built might collapse at any moment always followed me. That fear followed me like my shadow wherever I went. The source of that anxiety began with a strange, passed down through generations in our family. My family was once a wealthy family that ruled over 8 provinces of Joseon. Its power was truly great. He owned a large amount of land and slaves and accumulated enormous wealth by operating merchant groups throughout the country. From grain trading to silk, porcelain, and medicinal herbs, there was no business he did not touch. And he demonstrated outstanding skills in every field and achieved great success. Even among the wealthiest men of the time, our Kim family's name was ranked among the best. But behind that wealth, a dark shadow loomed. When I was very young, my grandfather would always say something meaningful. His eyes were always filled with deep sadness and regret, as if looking at a heavy burden that has been carried throughout one's life. Those eyes were deeply engraved in my young heart. Young-soo, this is not the only property I will leave you. Do not forget that. This property also carries the curse of our family. This wealth is stained with blood and tears, so do not take its weight lightly. At that time, I just dismissed it as an old man's ramblings. To my young mind, my grandfather's words sounded like a somewhat exaggerated tale. I never quite understood why. My grandfather spoke with such a solemn expression, But the deep sadness and regret in my grandfather's eyes left a powerful impression on me, even as a child. Those words were planted like a tiny seed somewhere in my heart, and I never dreamed that it would take a long time before I would realize their meaning. When I was 20, my grandfather passed away after a long illness and left a will. The will contained such shocking content that it completely shook up the course of my life. The will left me a vast fortune, but contained one strange and strict condition. This property will be passed down from generation to generation, but no descendant may use it for personal gain or to satisfy selfish desires. We must give only to our neighbors and society, share generously with the poor and suffering, and return whatever is left to society. If we break this will and indulge in greed, the curse that has been ingrained in our family will resurface and take everything away, and this disaster will not stop until the family line is wiped out. I laughed at that will. A curse? That's just an old-fashioned superstition. A curse in a modern society, dominated by science and reason, is absurd. I simply viewed my grandfather's will as a warning to protect his estate. Perhaps I didn't fully understand my grandfather's intentions, or perhaps I didn't even try to understand them and instead just let my greedy desires take precedence. I used the inherited wealth as seed money to expand my business, and I accumulated even greater wealth. By applying my skills and talents, people called me the Hand of Midas. Every business I've touched has prospered, and every investment I've made has brought in huge profits. It seemed like every time I touched money, it turned into gold. My business took off like wings. The media hailed me as a role model for young entrepreneurs, and people from all walks of life invited me to learn the secrets of my success. I was at the pinnacle of success, but I was always thirsty. No matter how much money I made, no matter how many things I owned, my heart was not filled. Rather, the more money I had, the more I became obsessed with the endless desire to acquire more. I wanted to climb higher than others and own more. That desire whipped me, and I ran relentlessly after money. But the more I did that, the deeper the emptiness in my heart became. And I experienced the contradiction. One day, a great storm came into my life. I will suffer a great misfortune. The business I've dedicated my entire life to has suddenly been thrown into a major crisis. I was betrayed by a colleague I trusted and the business partner. I expanded the business with stole my funds and disappeared. We lost our core technology to competitors and our ambitious investments in new businesses have led to successive failures. To make matters worse, a sudden economic crisis hit, and my business fell into an uncontrollable abyss. And now I put myself in this prison because I knew there was nowhere else to run. The last remorse that I must repent brought me here. I believed I lived my whole life for my family. But the story I'm about to tell today is a record of one man's downfall and how a family descends into hell. It all started with that one anonymous letter. Your children are not your blood. At first I thought it was a joke, but that letter was the trigger that shook my entire life. DNA test results show that my son, Min Jae, and my daughter Soo Jin are not my children. The children I raised with blood, sweat, and tears for 40 years turned out to be people who had nothing to do with There was a moment of silence. My heart stopped, and everything went black. I remembered 30 years ago, the night I found out about my wife's affair. My partner was a young painter. I was so angry and jealous that I deliberately rammed his car His last scream, his bloody face, is still vivid in my ears and eyes. This is the end. Now my home is protected. I believed so. But the murder I committed that day became a curse in my life. A few days later, more shocking facts came to light. There was a child born from an affair with his wife and sent to an orphanage. I never knew in my life. The child appeared before me as an adult. You destroyed our mother. Now it is my turn to destroy you. There was a moment of silence. I couldn't say anything. Min-jae and Soo-jin, the kids I trusted, already knew everything. Even when my wife was alive, I conspired. Soo-jin used the secrets of infidelity and murder. She heard from her mother to expose my father's past and extort money. Min-jae was ruined by drugs and Soo-jin by gambling, and they were after my inheritance. Why are you holding on to our property when you are not our biological father? Min-jae shouted. At that moment, I realized it was around that time that my wife's will was discovered, left before she died, that it was not my children, but strange enemies who were trying to destroy me. It was about leaving all of my property to my children. But soon the shocking truth was revealed. The will was a forgery. It was a trap set up by Soo-jin and Min-jae in collusion with a lawyer. There was a moment of silence. My knees buckled and I almost fell over. At that time, the sender of the letter was revealed. My old friend Park Jun-ho, whom I believed to be my friend for 40 years, was actually the brother of the painter I killed. Junyo has been by my side for decades, posing as a friend, helping me with my business, counseling me on my family issues and understanding everything about me. And finally, I took out the blade. You killed my brother. I wanted to be there for you and watch your life fall apart. Now my revenge is complete. His eyes were madness. My life was a puppet, controlled by his hands. My children tried to force me into a mental hospital. Junho even tried to get his hands on my property. I'm in a hell deeper than prison. My family abandoned me, my friends deceived me, and my conscience had long since rotted away. There was a moment of silence. I asked myself, was I human? Or was it a monster? So I turned myself into the police. I confessed all my sins one by one. The blood on my hands, the betrayal in my heart, I poured it all out. Now all that remains before me is repentance. But I have a favor to ask of you. The one who hears my confession, trust your family. But at the same time, remember that trust can turn into betrayal at any time. Sincerity is more important than wealth, and forgiveness is stronger than anger. I am now making this confession, old and broken, watching the dawn sunlight filter through the prison walls. But do you know what it feels like to be abandoned by your trusted family at an old age? How often do seniors find themselves isolated in society, their families only after their wealth, and disregarding their feelings? But it's not just about money. From an ethical standpoint, it's a loss of humanity. For a child to collude in the sins of their parents, sin has its price. But what's the point? If the price is destroying your family, from a social perspective, this cycle further exacerbates the loneliness of the elderly and betrayal family. Is not simply a personal issue. It is a social pain that leads to elder abuse and inheritance disputes. Ethically, we must forgive sins and seek reconciliation. Before it's too late, like me, reach out to your family. I thought it was over, but the real hell starts now. But the truth is that the only way out of that hell is through sincere forgiveness that comes from the depths of your heart. The media covered my downfall in great detail, and those who once praised me turned their backs on me My life started to shake up completely. I was frustrated and desperate. I felt like I had lost the meaning of life. In this desperate situation, where everything was falling apart, I finally remembered my grandfather's will. Surely does the curse really exist? Is all this a punishment for greed, as my grandfather said? I began to tremble in fear. My grandfather's warnings rang in my ears day and night. I was gripped by the fear that everything I had might disappear. Until then, I was proud that my success was solely due to my own abilities and efforts. But in the face of a reality that crumbled in an instant, I had no choice but to be humble. In the midst of the pain of losing my wealth, I suddenly began to look back at my family's history. I took out some old documents that had been left in a corner of my study for a long time. Among them was an old diary, clearly marked by the passage of time. Found among my grandfather's belongings, after dusting off the diary and carefully unfolding it, I found a shocking and heartbreaking truth. Our ancestors amassed wealth by plundering the property of refugees, fleeing the Japanese army. During the national tragedy of the Imjin War, our family's wealth began on the blood and tears of the starving and suffering. When famine struck and people starved to death, our ancestors stockpiled grain, waited for prices to rise, and then made huge profits. He forcibly took the land of the powerless people and made them slaves to increase his wealth. Their wealth was built on the suffering and sacrifice of their people. This guilt was passed down through generations, and the diaries of our ancestors recorded in detail that the more wealth they accumulated, the more they suffered from unknown misfortunes and disasters. He said that his children were dying of unknown illnesses, and that ominous incidents continued to occur. I was horrified by the record of how, no matter how much wealth one accumulated, one could not find peace of mind, and instead lived an unhappy life plagued by guilt and anxiety. One ancestor wrote, "This wealth will never bring us happiness. Rather, it becomes a chain that binds us, and we must break free from the curse of this wealth." There was also this passage in the diary. This was more than just a simple record. It seemed to contain the cry and earnest wish of our ancestors. Our wealth is cursed. This wealth, stained with blood and tears, will only bring misfortune to our family for generations to come. To break this curse, we must lay down everything and return our possessions to the world, their original owner. Otherwise, this disaster will continue endlessly, and our family will ultimately be destroyed. Please, descendants, do not follow in the footsteps of these foolish ancestors. Do not covet wealth, but atone by for the sharing sins of your family. Only then could I understand what my grandfather was saying. He wasn't simply warning to protect his property. He left such a solemn and earnest will to break the curse, to atone for the sins of his family, and to prevent his descendants from living an unhappy life. I lamented my foolishness in realizing my grandfather's meaning profound. I am deeply reflective and regretful. The wealth I enjoyed was not built on my own efforts, but on the sins of my ancestors. And I inherited that sin and lived a life of greed. Perhaps my business crisis was the curse's final warning to me. No, it definitely would have been like that. It was the last chance heaven gave me. I wanted to give up everything. I was overcome by the urge to let go of everything I had built up and run away from the world. But suddenly the last sentence of my grandfather's will came to mind. You should only give to your neighbors and society and return whatever is left to society. That phrase resonated deeply in my heart. It came to me like a ray of light. As I wandered in the darkness, I realized true freedom lies not in owning everything, but in letting go of everything. True wealth lies not in accumulating it, but in sharing it. I decided to live the rest of my life as a life of atonement and no longer be driven by material desires. I decided to liquidate my struggling business and return all my remaining assets to society. I spent countless nights agonizing over this decision. There was also strong dissuasion and criticism from those around me. At first, there were many who opposed it. There was a barrage of criticism and ridicule, with people saying things like, "You've lost your mind. You're crazy." The employees who had followed me for a long time did not understand my decision. And even my family opposed my choice. I've heard countless times, "Why are you throwing away all your perfectly good assets? Why are you going through hardships when you can live the rest of your life in comfort?" But I didn't bend my resolve. I started donating a lot anonymously. I dedicated myself to helping those in need, building schools and hospitals in underprivileged areas. We provided warm meals to the homeless and educational opportunities to children from low-income families. We provided scholarships to help talented young people pursue their dreams and also established a fund for environmental protection. I went out and looked for places that needed help. I personally participated in volunteer work and experienced the joy of sweating. I felt that donating my wealth alone wasn't enough. I wanted to contribute to the world directly with my body. Surprisingly, as I began to let go of my possessions, the emptiness in my heart began to disappear. The anxiety that had been tormenting me so much disappeared like a mirage. My anxious mind became calm, and an inexplicable happiness enveloped me. In the process of helping others, I realized the true meaning of life. I discovered precious values that money. Seeing people's smiles, tears of gratitude, and seeing my small help transform someone's life, I felt a fulfillment that is indescribable. The wealth and success I've been chasing all this time were nothing. I realized that true happiness can only be achieved when you exist for others. My life has become incomparably richer than before. Now I don't lose sleep at night anymore. In the stillness of dawn, I feel peace and gratitude. My heart is as calm and peaceful as a calm lake. Through this confession, I want to convey one message to you. True wealth does not lie in material possessions. True wealth lies in sharing and giving, and only in this can we find true peace and happiness. I now wish to donate all my remaining assets to society and prepare for the final journey of my life with a light heart. This entire process was a time of painful self-reflection for me, but at the same time it was a valuable journey that helped me realize the true value of life. If the trials and errors I've experienced and the insights I've gained can provide even a little wisdom to your life, I'll be more than satisfied. I hope this story resonates with you. I sincerely hope that the lessons I've learned through the shadows of my life can bring meaningful insights to yours as well. I hope this will be an opportunity for us to think deeply about what is truly important in life and what we should live for. Thank you. I wish you peace. A classy spark of inspirational quotes and true stories from Kim, Youngsu's prison cell for seniors. See you next time. Rest well.